Ladies and gentlemen, how are you doing? I am sat here in my cell waiting for the day of release. But for those of you who've been asking, how has it been being suspended? Honestly, not bad at all. I haven't really thought about WoW since the suspension. I guess that comes with knowing that you're suspended for a while. But also, you forget how habitual a lot of your WoW play is. Certainly when it comes to day-to-day play, if you're in the spot where you're just kind of like mooching your AP up, then it's hard to miss that. It really is hard to miss that. But I still stand by my conviction that 8.2 is going to be the turnaround. In fact, we had a number of conspiracy theories surrounding that idea as to why 8.2 would be the big turnaround. And guess what? It looks like we were right. Oh, baby! It does look like we were correct, if we are to believe the recent interview by Mr. Ian Hazakostas, where it addressed a number of issues, and always people are going to be salty about anything said by WoW, or untrustworthy of anything Ian says. As we do know, we can't really hold Blizzard to the same trustworthy standard anymore. We just can't. We've been lied to so many times over the last couple of expansions. But I am erring on the side of optimism, because I do feel like 8.2 is going to be better. I feel they had to do something, and hopefully it is the good stuff. It's not on the PTR yet, although in the interview it does say we will be getting stuff soon. So we will keeping our peepers open for that. But I think for many of us, probably including myself, it is kind of the last attempt to rescue World of Warcraft, at least for the BFA expansion. So we'll wait and see. So maybe that's part of my optimism. Who knows? However, I would say I wouldn't read the summaries of the interview on that's currently like on the front page of MMO Champion. Ian likes to talk. I like to talk. Ian likes to talk a lot too. And the context and the explanations that go into a lot of what he says are really worthwhile, because if you read the summary points, it doesn't really get across the message exactly as he was talking about, and therefore you can have a skewed perspective because you're only getting like half the story. And it's worth reading because it's not a particularly long interview. It's very short. So it is linked down below, and I would recommend you read it. Anyway, so we go through the usual bump in this interview about 8.2. Although I am an optimist about 8.2, I remain ultimately pessimistic about any new actual world content being good. I did ride the cherry train when Argus was coming out, and got to Argus, and also learned a very valuable lesson myself, which is something that I learned very, very clearly in Legion, is that with the time gating systems Blizzard employs now, we are all aware of them, is that I really do have to measure my expectations when testing on the PTR. Certainly for something like a major release of a patch, something like the Broken Isles that we got in Legion, is that we get everything straight away on the test realm, so we can test that all aspects are working, and then they time gate it afterwards, which actually gives you a very different experience. And we had the same with Argus, we had the same with the burning of Teldrassil, where it ultimately ended up being very, very time gated. And it just felt awkward and clumsy when it actually came to the live version, because you were starting and stopping this story seemingly at random. Some sort of slight deviant to the plan meant that we had to wait a week to get anything done. So I'm not going to say anything. Until I get to play it, I will remain pessimistic about how good Mechagon's going to be, how good Nazjatar's going to be. I don't know. I'm not really interested in that at all. But the Azerite armor. The Azerite armor. The Azerite armor was a big topic in this interview, and it was good to read because, first of all, it confirmed the conspiracy theory. It confirmed that they have been working on getting rid of Azerite armor, essentially, for a long time. A long, long time. And there are certain discussions that lead that. They say they've been working on it for months, and that they knew very early on, once the first feedback started to come in on the Azerite armor, that it was scuffed, it was fucked, that it was bad, that the problems were obvious. Look, if I can look at it, and this is what bothered me the most about Azerite armor, and bothered me the most about the guys currently in charge of the development of World of Warcraft. If it takes somebody like me to look at the Azerite armor for less than 30 seconds and see that this system is terrible, it's bad, and also accurately predict every single problem this armor is going to have going forward in 30 seconds, then you do worry about the guys behind the scenes who are working on this stuff, that nobody at the drawing room, sat at the table when the drawing board's out there and they're discussing the system, is going, I think the system might suck, that really is a bad thing. You want the devs to be going, okay, I see what you're coming with. Yeah, all right, I understand that from a design perspective, and this really ties into something that Asmon has been pushing recently, and certainly every discussion I've had with him, usually on the Allcraft show, is that a lot of the decisions are made because the designers don't like it, although the players don't really mind. And this is where Azerite armor was born for, and we actually kind of have that confirmed now, is that they didn't like the artifact weapons because it was front-loaded. You got all your good stuff early, and you would spend the next X amount of months slowly grinding out the more boring things in your weapon. Now, for the most part, people didn't really care because the stuff they were grinding out at the end was nice little bonuses, but you still had the main stuff. And not only that, by the time we had all the extra bonuses coming out later in the expansion, it didn't matter too much. You were getting extra power levels, you were gaining DPS, it was fine. It was alright. Like, it wasn't perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say, God, that system was amazing. Sure, it's got room for improvement. Azerite armor was not it. Do you hear what I'm saying? Azerite armor was not the solution. The problem wasn't that bad. It really wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. Especially as you got the main feature of your Azerite artifact weapon immediately. You got it one getting the artifact weapon. That was the big thing. And it was the wrong way to go. But they say, from a design perspective, we didn't like that. Okay. But did the players really have a problem with that? I don't think so. I don't think there were many players, even late game, who were just doing a couple of world quests and unlocking the entire artifact weapon who really complained. And as somebody who grinded his out, I was quite happy to get most of my big DPS upgrades from my artifact weapon and be somewhat done with that grind, but it could still continue in a non-useless fashion. There are a lot of benefits to that system. I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of benefits to going, you're kind of like soft capped, is what we talk about. You're soft capped. The stuff that's really affecting your damage or your tanking or your healing, you've done that now. But the weapon will still continue to provide some bonuses, but they're not that big of a deal. And you can continue to benefit from gaining artifact power throughout the remainder of the expansion in some form or another. I think that's fine. But they do talk about that's kind of where the Azerite armor was born from, and it was a design choice and all that kind of thing. Again, wasn't something I've looked back over my Legion content, wasn't really something we talked about. In most cases, we actually talked about the grind continuing, and I think that was Blizzard's response to this, is that people are getting nearly finished and we need to add more and more and more and more and more. And a lot of people are like, not really. Not really. It's fine. It's okay to be done with stuff. And that was something they said in BFAs. It's okay to be done with the grind. Yet what we've seen again is a continuous grind being put into the game in the name of the Heart of Azeroth, which more and more people are completing now as it's about to continue into its next chapter. And it's its next chapter which is kind of interesting. It's the new Heart of Azeroth. So we have had it confirmed. They are going to keep Azerite armor. I'm saying scrap it, but they're scrapping the idea of brand new armor comes out and you've got to regrind it and unlock stuff and all that kind of crap. They are keeping Azerite armor in. They're not relenting on just putting tier sets back into the game. Just fucking put them back. They were way better. So they're going to introduce some new Azerite traits. I do not hold much hope for something interesting there. I will be happily surprised if there is. But considering the shift is now going to be onto the necklace itself and that progression path, I kind of think Azerite armor is here till the end of the expansion. Don't expect much from it. Don't expect much from it. It's just going to be something we've got to deal with. And if that's too much for you, I understand. I just don't expect too much. But if there is something good in there, hunky-dory, happy. But from everything we've seen, no, probably not. Now, the neck will have stuff that you can do. And the big revelation here, not only that they have been working on this for months, the big revelation here is that they are doing away with the idea that they can just have rental shit and then scrap it each expansion. And they are doing away, finally, praise the heavens, with trying to have each individual World of Warcraft expansion exist in its like own pocket universe. Thank fucking God. It doesn't even... You know how ridiculous it is now, especially after Legion with the class halls. It is fucking ridiculous that these people, these major members of the World of Warcraft, these major NPC characters, seemingly have no fucking clue about the fact that there is a giant dagger stuck into the planet. Even people who live in the heart of the planet haven't noticed this happening. Like, what? You can't do it. It's not an RPG with some DLC. where you go to a brand new land and deal with brand new characters. It is not Baldur's Gate, and here's an extra tower that we give you as DLC, and in the tower it's all very hard and stuff like that. This is a living, breathing, persistent world. We go to Northrend. We go to Pandaria. We go back to Legion. We do all of these things, right? This is a world that is continuously in motion and breathing at all times. And the biggest mistake they've made in so fucking long is trying to cut ties with that expansion and reinvent the wheel every fucking time. So we have heard it confirmed by Ian that they're going to be relaxing their stance on trying not to put anything into the game. So if you've been following me for a while, you will know that this is something we talked about during Warlords of Draenor, of how terrified Blizzard has obviously been with adding new stuff to the game because they can't get rid of it when it's in unless they do a complete reinvention, which is what they've been doing. That was their solution. It was the only way it could go. It didn't need a profit to see it. So if they add new spells to a class, people love those fucking spells, and it's extremely hard to get rid of them. So the only way you can do that is to change the spec entirely. So we get brand new demonology, we get brand new outlaw rogues, we get all these things because it's the only way to get rid of some of the clutter. And instead they just kept pruning and pruning and pruning and pruning and pruning, and people were going, I just have way less shit than I used to have like 6 years ago. This doesn't make any sense. Why have I forgotten how to do all these things? My character feels stupider as a result of this. So they said it's going to be untidy, but they need to be way less afraid of adding stuff into the game that they'll just have to deal with down the line in some way or another. Good. That's your problem to deal with. It's not ours. And you can't punish the player's enjoyment of the game so it makes your life easier. You can't do that. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work whatsoever. So they are going to be doing that, which is great. In terms of the Heart of Azeroth, again, I remain somewhat pessimistic and also optimistic at the same time. I'm wary of the Heart of Azeroth because I want it to be something that rejuvenates classes. And that's what it needs to do. That was what I said during the alpha of BFA. 6 days after the alpha launched, my video is, the Azerite armor has a hell of a lot to do because these classes are fuck boring. They are so boring. And there's nothing here to look forward to. There's nothing interesting whatsoever. We've covered this ground a million times. That's what the heart needs to do. Now, they're saying it will have active abilities in it. It'll have things that are interesting. They'll have things that you can add to your spell bar, and you're going to be able to change up your rotation. One hopes it's not just it's the Legion legendaries, right? Or it's some of the artifact spells from the artifact weapons revamped in some way. Hopefully, they've spent these months that they've been working on this in order to make this stuff better. The only real negative I could pull from this, because again, it's somewhat lawyer speak, but the only real negative is they kind of said, well, Azerite armor was a problem. We responded as much as we could, but ultimately, going forward, we should have endgame stuff in the testing phase earlier. I just think it's a dumb thing to say. It didn't need to be said. And whether you're trying to shift the blame or say this is what we did wrong or something like that, it just didn't do you any favors to say this, in my opinion. Because, yeah, duh, if you're going to have a major feature of the game go untested with zero communication whatsoever, that's probably not a good idea. And it does come down to a little bit of ego on Blizzard's side to say, we're pretty sure this is great. No. No, it's not. It's really bad. It's really, really quite bad. And while it should be plainly obvious to anyone, is if you're going to have a feature of a game that is going to be the backbone of the entire character progression system, you probably want to get feedback on that as early as possible. Because, I mean, it's so dumb to contemplate not doing that in the first place, which is what Blizzard did in BFA. A massive blunder on their part. Perhaps overconfidence, perhaps ego, perhaps wary more realistically that they knew people weren't going to like it. That's where I err. I err on the side of they know this is going to suck. It definitely sucks. There's no way of getting around it. On paper, it seemed good. That's fine. But in implementation, this is fucking bad. Like, we have no details on this armor. They're definitely going to need graphs and spreadsheets to work out what's good. It just is bad. Like, we can't even explain in the tooltips why have we made so many traits. We've no idea. I look back now at the 200 plus traits they made for Azerite armor and go, why? Why did we do this? This is more than legendaries and artifact weapons combined. Like, what the fuck were we thinking with this thing? Interesting, to say the least. So, glad to see a lot of what we hope for happening. Now, some of you will remain very pessimistic, I'm sure, saying, it's not going to happen, Mike. Maybe. But as I did mention at the beginning of the video, 8.2, I think for many of us still remaining, which, from what I could tell, ain't that many. There are, I mean, you could just look at Twitch and see how many people... The meme is Twitch refugees. So those of you who don't watch Twitch or streams might not be as aware of it as certainly I am and other people are, is that if you go to streams of Final Fantasy, of RuneScape and things like that, a lot of streamers are doing very well right now by openly advertising in their titles that they are accepting WoW refugees in order to help them and support them and answer any questions they've got. All those kinds of things, because that's where the viewership's coming from now. People are moving over to those games. So that's something to bear in mind. Thank you very much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.